Afternoon, Council, and good afternoon, everyone who's here for our special meeting that's starting a little early tonight, and we appreciate everybody showing up. Thank you very much. I declare the meeting now open, and I would like to ask you if you do have a cell phone or an electronic device, if you'd please put it on mute or vibrate. And if it does get your attention, if you could take the call outside, that would be wonderful. Not outside, out in the hallway outside. So I should also like to advise you that our meetings are both audio and video recorded. We do live stream them, so these records shall be kept and retained according to the town's procedural bylaw. And if you need more information about our procedural bylaw, you can get that from our wonderful clerk's office. So we'll start by approving the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder for tonight's agenda? Councillor Orsatti and Councillor Ices. Is there any amendments, Madam Clerk, Madam Deputy Clerk? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a possible pecuniary interest in item 4.2. My son built that boathouse, so I'm not going to call it.
Thank you so much. So that's in writing to the clerk's office as to the new Municipal Act. Thank you. And next we will go to, is there any other pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Next we'll go to our first presentation. I'm going to get the name wrong, so I'll let you introduce your, or Jason, you can do the introductions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Worship, members of Council. We're very pleased to be before you this evening at this special council meeting to discuss the opportunity for the town of Innisfil to facilitate the payment of property taxes, among other things, with cryptocurrency. And there's a staff report on the council agenda tonight. We thank you very much for taking the opportunity a little bit earlier. It's always a busy agenda in council, and so we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about this matter. Your Worship, if it's possible, as much as this is in the chamber and we are live broadcasting now, we very much welcome this to be as workshop-y, if I can call it that, as possible. I appreciate that we're in the council chamber, but really this is the opportunity for you and the members of the public to really ask those questions about cryptocurrency, blockchain, how this would work, how could it work, what are the risks, what are the concerns. Happy very much to go where you'd like to go on this topic. I'm going to be joined by a few people up at the podium. In fact, I'm going to turn it over to them. But before I do that, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank very much Council and the public for the opportunity to engage with these progressive, innovative ideas with an open mind. You know, the world is full of misinformation and information, and sometimes it's hard to sort through all of that. And so we appreciate the opportunity to engage with these ideas. And as we like to say, we pause at the status quo to catch our breath and then move on to continue to innovate for our residents and our business owners. I want to thank my staff as well. These opportunities are rarely programmed into our budgets and our work plans. Opportunities present themselves, and I'm very much proud of the work that they do that is really on top of their day jobs, if I can put it that way. And so you'll see and you'll get a sense tonight that this opportunity has touched a number of departments, and a number of staff have worked hard, from communications to IT to legal, and I'm missing them, so I shouldn't list them like this, finance. But we appreciate their energy and their effort to get these things done in addition to their day-to-day jobs. So it is a collaborative exercise, and I appreciate that energy. So I'd like to introduce Andre, who's the president and CEO of Coinberry.
Thank you very much, sir. So before you do, I'm going to say that on our agenda, we have 2 items. One of them is this part, which is the workshop, which is talking about this first item, the cryptocurrency. The public meeting for the Shoreline Community Planning Permit will begin at
6:30.
6:30.
Your Honor, with all due respect, Mayor Dolan, I do not want this matter to proceed without some strong objections on behalf of a number of people that I have spoken to in the community. My request to you would be, will we have an opportunity to speak? I have already submitted a brief to yourself and to our counselor, Mr. Fowler, and also to the assistant.
Yes, sir, you will. During the opportunity, it's a public meeting. It's a public meeting. You'll have the opportunity to speak, but that public meeting starts at 6:30, sir.
Okay, but what about the open house itself? What are we here to hear for?
So right now, the open house is out in the hallway, and the open house is it's your ability to ask questions and get answers that maybe would help you when you come in to do your deputation and speak in front of council. It was simply available to you to get information ahead of time. But 6:30 is the time. We have to adhere to that because I'm sure that there will be other people who will want to...
Are you telling me, Mayor, that the only party we're going to hear from at this stage of the meeting is the Beaumont people?
Sir, no. We're in a totally different part of our meeting right now. We're talking about cryptocurrency. We're not talking about boathouses. We're not talking about anything.
With all due respect, is the sponsor of the creation of the shoreline of Lake Simcoe. I'm here, I'll just make it short. I am here to oppose any development along the shoreline of Lake Simcoe. And I would like to have the opportunity and the time, what time it doesn't really matter, as long as it's done tonight. There's no point in me standing out here at a public meeting if I'm not going to have the attention of council.
Sir, you're going to have the attention of council, but you have to respect that this is a public agenda that has been posted for a week. So people who are interested in that item will be here at 6:30 to deal with that item. We're not dealing with that item right now. Thank you. Mr. Rayner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. And my apologies to the public. We do try to maximize the amount of time that council can be as productive as possible, and so we do often have a number of meetings that are stacked on top of each other, and frankly, I have a hard time keeping track of it too. So I apologize to the public for that. But back to a different kind of innovation, Your Worship. So I'm happy and pleased to be joined by Andre, who is the president and CEO of Coinberry, a Canadian Toronto-based company that's federally regulated. And I'm pleased to turn it over to Andre, who has not only an engineering degree, but an MBA, and has had international experience with startup companies, over 10 years experience. And so thank you for welcoming him to the chamber. And in the same presentation, we'll also, thanks Kim, we'll also have Grant Cowan, our manager of IT, as well as Sharon Downey, who's our supervisor of revenue services. And so we'll do quick handoffs, if that's okay, Your Worship, through this presentation. And as I indicated, please don't hesitate to ask us questions. There certainly will be an opportunity at the end of the PowerPoint, but this is the kind of thing that we appreciate. There's a whole jargon that comes with this. It's a whole new way of approaching finances, and so we're happy to go where you want to go, Your Worship and members of council, in this workshop. Thank you very much. Andre.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jason. Your Worship and members of council, I'd like to thank you for giving myself an opportunity to speak here before you. I'd like to echo Jason's sentiment, and feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentations. We'll do our best to share with you some of the details of this initiatives, and also try to educate about the wonderful and innovative world of cryptocurrency. So, just make sure this is working. Oh, okay, there's a bit of a delay. Right, so first I'd like to just review the agenda we'll be going through today. We will discuss cryptocurrency as a method of payment. We will discuss the growing usage and popularity of cryptocurrency, talk about unlocking new opportunities for municipalities and towns, and we'll then go into a bit of detail about Coinberry, who we are as a company, when we were founded, and what our sort of philosophy is. And then we'll have a walkthrough of how this will work for the town of Innisfil, and then we'll do our best to answer some of your questions and concerns. So there's a bit of a delay on the clicker, it seems. So one thing I'd like to start off with is to talk about this new method of payment that we are looking at that will allow the residents of Innisfil, of the town of Innisfil, to pay their property taxes using various cryptocurrencies. Before we get too much into the weeds, what I'd like to address and very strongly is that what we're suggesting is an addition to the current methods available. So we're not suggesting a replacement of any current methods of payment, but simply an addition to give residents more options and more choices. So that's very important, and that obviously is the choice of paying for property taxes using cryptocurrencies. It is as simple as paying with a bank account, and we'll go into more details about that. But before I start, don't take my word for it. We have a video from a taxpayer of Innisfil who would like to share his opinion on our initiative.
Hi, I'm Dr. Evan Hill. I'm 42 years old. I'm a married dad, 3 kids. We own a property in Innisfil in Friday Harbor. And recording this on the topic of being able to pay property taxes with Bitcoin. And I'd be really excited about the opportunity to do that for a number of reasons. Number one, giving me more avenues to use Bitcoin. And we're developing actually a company, a global company, and a lot of our partners and team members are in different areas of the world, and using things like PayPal and that kind of thing. We just actually had a transaction. It's just around $500, and a transaction of $500 costs $40 in PayPal and fees. So using things like Bitcoin, it's just so much easier, less costly, and so that's our preferred method to transfer money and so on. So that will actually give us an avenue to use Bitcoin to be able to pay things like property taxes. And I think another thing too is it really shows the innovation of Innisfil. You know, it's really forward thinking, and it's one of the things that really appealed to us. And having actually spent some time in Innisfil looking at what they've already done with their community center and the library and that kind of thing, we're actually strongly considering relocating there. And I think something like this really speaks to that forward-thinking innovation that I think really sets Innisfil aside. So yeah, those are my thoughts on including Bitcoin as an option to pay your property taxes with. I definitely think it's a win, and yeah, I'd be excited to be a part of that. So thanks very much.
Great. So I think this is a wonderful testament to somebody, Dr. Evan Hill, that is looking forward to utilizing this feature, this new method of payment. And I think this is very important to keep in mind as we go forward and as some of the questions are answered, that there is real demand for this from the taxpayers of the town of Innisfil. So moving forward, I'm going to go now into answering the question of what is cryptocurrency for those of you that may not be familiar or may be slightly familiar with the topic. So cryptocurrency is a form of digital cash. That is all that it is, and at a very high level, it is a form of digital cash. And it is also a form of peer-to-peer money. So cryptocurrency does not use a central administrator or central bank to transfer money from one individual to another. It's a peer-to-peer network. And all it really is an algorithm. It's a very secure algorithm, and it allows one individual to directly transact with another individual without the use of an intermediary. Cryptocurrency is also extremely cheap to send because there is no middleman involved. So for certain transactions, it is quite economically beneficial, as Dr. Evan Hill pointed out in his video, to actually pay and remit in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is the most popular cryptocurrency that you may have heard about in the news. Bitcoin was created in 2018, and it remains to this day the most popular. It was the first cryptocurrency created and remains the most popular one to date. Other examples of cryptocurrency that, other than Bitcoin is Ethereum and Litecoin. And interesting point, Ethereum is actually a cryptocurrency that was developed in Toronto. So I think it goes to show that Canada and Ontario are very, very forward-thinking and have established themselves as hubs of innovation when it comes to this new digital method of transacting financially. And I think it's very important to keep in mind. I'm going to show a little video next that does a little better job than I did.
When you want
in
to
explaining
buy
what
something
cryptocurrencies
normally,
are.
using your normal bank card, this is what happens. I give my card details to the shop. The shop asks the bank if I'm good for the money. The bank checks its records to see if I've got enough in my account. If I do, it lets the shop know. It updates its records to show the movement of money from my account to the shop's. Oh, and it takes a little cut for its trouble. Now, if you wanted to remove the bank from that system, who else would you trust to keep those records and not alter them or cheat in any way? Well, I wouldn't trust you. I wouldn't trust you. In fact, I wouldn't trust any single person, but I might trust everyone. The idea is you don't have a central record of transactions. Instead, you distribute many, many copies of this ledger around the world. Each owner of each copy records every transaction. So, to buy something using cryptocurrency, I give the shop my details. The shop asks all the bookkeepers if I'm good for the money. The bookkeepers all check their records to see if I have enough. If I do, they tell the shop, and then all update their records to show the movement of money. So there's no way that a forged transaction can make it in. If I try to alter a ledger, it won't match all of the other copies, and it gets rejected. Oh, and one of them, at random, will be given a reward of some newly created cryptocurrency. This is how cryptocurrencies work. And remember, all of these bookkeepers, all of these ledgers, they're not actually people, they're computers. Lots of computers.
Great. So, great video by the BBC, and I think, as I mentioned, I think there's a little bit of a more animated version of what I was trying to convey. So, moving on, what I'd like to point out is that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular is growing in popularity around the world and in Canada as well. There was a study that was done in 2018 by the Bank of Canada that found that over 5% of Canadians back in 2018 actually own Bitcoin, which, if you think about it, is amazing considering this technology only came out about 10 years ago. So in 10 years, the penetration has been within Canada 5% already, and it's growing quite aggressively, and we'll show on a subsequent slide the growth of the adoption of cryptocurrency. But what is also important to note is that cryptocurrencies in general are a new development in our world, and nobody is going to stand here and say that everybody knows what cryptocurrencies are, that everybody knows what Bitcoin is. No, we're very cognizant of the fact that this is a new technology, but it's a new technology that's ramping up in popularity, that's ramping up in adoption, and that's very important to note as well. Moving on to the next slide, this actually shows quite well the growth and the number of cryptocurrency users globally. So the last data there is January of this year, and you can see that regardless of whether Bitcoin is in the news as it was in late 2017 on every single channel, or now we fast forward a year, the rate of growth is steadily increasing as more and more people around the world and in Canada and in the town of Innisfil adopt this new method of transaction and adopt this new technology. So I think it's very important to keep in mind. So moving forward, what is a Bitcoin wallet, and how do you actually transact using Bitcoin as an example of the most popular cryptocurrency? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically parallel Bitcoin and your bank account and try to draw some parallels there. So when somebody says that they own Bitcoin, in essence what they require to have are three things: a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin address, and a private key. So how does each one of those actually parallel to a bank account that we all have and know how to use? So a Bitcoin wallet is akin to the bank that you bank with. So whether it's BMO, RBC, TD, or CIBC. So when somebody says, I have a Bitcoin wallet by such and such company, all they're basically saying is that my account, my Bitcoin account, is held in an app or manufactured by such and such company, which is akin to you saying, I have a bank account at such and such bank. So the next level down is your Bitcoin address. So this is akin to your bank account number. So if you would like to receive money from somebody, you can give them your bank account number and they will e-transfer or wire in money, or you can give them your Bitcoin address and then they can directly send you Bitcoin into your Bitcoin address. Again, the big difference being that there's no bank involved. Now, the next level down is your private key, and that is your bank, that is akin to your bank account password. So when you are sending Bitcoin to somebody else, you need to have your private key at hand in order to sign that transaction, in order to authenticate or authorize that movement of Bitcoin funds. So again, Bitcoin wallet is like the bank you bank with. Bitcoin address is your bank account number that you are free to share with people that you would like to receive Bitcoin from. And your private key is something you must hold very securely and dear to you. That's your bank account password for, say, your online banking with your bank. So I hope that was quite clear. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If not, we'll move forward. And what I'd like to talk about here is...
We do have a couple of questions,
Sure.
if you don't mind. Sorry
No,
for the
absolutely. Here, I'll
interruption.
go back.
Councillor Asadi?
Thank you, Your Worship. Couple questions, certainly intriguing, and especially if you've never used it, understanding the concept. So the 5% of Canadians using it, is there an age demographic of customers using cryptocurrency? Is it the gentleman, I think he was 32 years old in the example, so are you finding seniors, or is it more youth-based?
I can tell you from the data that we have, Your Worship and members of the council, and we see two main groups of people. There's a younger generation and an older generation. So we see users between the age of 25 to 30 and then 50 to 60. So there's two major groups that we see that are interested in utilizing this.
Okay. Follow-up? Thank you. A few other questions. And sorry, I'm going to try and remember from reading the report and the other agenda. I seem to remember in reading before about a Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, one person only had the access or the password for a large account, the person died. What's the risk here? Like, this is a transfer, I think it's done immediately, correct? So out of your bank to the cryptocurrency to the seller. So no risk. So if you're holding this in a Bitcoin bank account, would you be putting other money into it, or is it only a transaction base?
May I continue with the
Sure.
presentation? Because we will address that question. And perhaps some of the other ones that you were thinking of asking, so maybe in hindsight, I can finish the presentation and we'll answer all the remaining questions, if that's okay with you.
Happy to do that.
Thank you so much. Good, okay, so moving forward. So what I'd like to review here is the adoption by municipalities in North America of cryptocurrency as a method of payment. So in May of 2018, Seminole County in Florida was the first county to accept Bitcoin as a service, as a payment for services such as taxes and driver's license fees. Later on in 2018, Ohio became the first US state to accept Bitcoin for taxes. In 2018, so late last year, Calgary launched the Calgary Digital Dollar, cryptocurrency to boost local economy. Now, this wasn't specifically for accepting payment of any sort of taxes in cryptocurrency, but it shows that even Canadian municipalities and cities are already looking at and considering the use of cryptocurrency for different reasons. Today, municipal election candidates can already accept donations in Bitcoin in Canada, and there are ongoing discussions at the federal level for the same. And what we see for tomorrow, probably speaking, is that municipalities and government agencies across Canada will start accepting payments in Bitcoin and other digital or cryptocurrencies.
Thanks. I'm just going to do a quick time check here, just because we've got 20 minutes for a full stop, and I think there's going to be a few questions, so I'm just going to ask that we...
Speed things up a little.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, will do. So, a little bit about Coinberry, the company that I represent up here. This is a quick screenshot of our website if you're interested. Mainly, we are a Toronto-based financial technology company. We are focused on blockchain and digital currency solutions. We have 14 employees in operations, customer support, compliance, and development. And some of my staff is sitting here and supporting me. Our mission is to become the most innovative provider of digital currency and blockchain solutions in Canada. We have over 15,000 users and members of our platform, all Canadian, and we are registered as a money service business with Financial Transactions and Report Analysis Center of Canada, also known as FinTrack. So, moving forward to the actual proposal that we have. So the proposal is for Coinberry to provide a payment gateway to the town of Innisfil, allowing residents to use Bitcoin to pay for property taxes. Okay? I'd like to welcome Grant to please join me. Oh, here you are.
Thanks, Andre.
To go over the next slide.
Good evening, Mayor Dolan and members of council. You may be wondering how this works. It's pretty simple, actually. You can see we have a little bit of flow chart in front of you. First, we have a button added to our website where a resident would click on that to make a payment. When clicking that button, they transferred to the Coinberry website where they can enter the information about the transaction, such as their roll number and things like that, and exchange their Bitcoin addresses, as Andre mentioned to you. At that point in time, Coinberry receives the Bitcoin, and immediately they go and they convert that to Canadian dollars. And then once that process is finished, then that money is received by the town. So it's fairly straightforward. It takes, I think, roughly an hour or so for that whole process to take place. So just a bit of a view on that. At any point in this transaction, the town never actually holds any cryptocurrency. It's received by Coinberry and converted to Canadian dollars. The organization or the setup is similar to what we have with Plastique, is that they facilitate taking a credit card payment and they take it on our behalf and transfer the funds to us and take a little bit of a commission on top of it. This works much the same way. By accepting the cryptocurrency, the town doesn't alter any risk exposure in any way. It's all a third party. And the cost to the town for offering this service is zero. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon.
A little short here. Can we go to the next screen, please? Residents, when they pay by Bitcoin, as far as the finance department's concerned, is fairly easy to implement and in a very short period of time. Like Grant had said, it's like Plastique. They're similar. It's a third-party payment, a third-party payment solution, which is, as you can see on our website, we've already got other options up there. Bitcoin would just be another option. Is there any, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. So going forward, an individual would click on the Pay with Bitcoin button. Similar to what happens with Plastique, they get taken to a separate page. Here they would enter their email, their name, address, their invoice bill or roll number in the case of Innisfil, upon which point they would be taken to a page, and this is the town of Innisfil's Bitcoin wallet address that I was explaining before. So an individual would send Bitcoin to this address, and this would get converted on the Coinbase platform right away into Canadian dollars once received. So again, the town of Innisfil is not exposed to the Bitcoin at any point in time. Moving forward, I'd like to invite Jason up here to...
Your Worship, members of council, I think in the interest of time, I'll save this slide. I think most of it's captured in the report, but happy to come back to it once we've gone through questions. Thank you.
Great. So, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, and I do apologize for making you rush through that. We did lose about 5 minutes there at the beginning, but I would now turn it over to Council for questions, and Councillor Payne, and then I'll go back to Councillor Sadi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question about that, and what is the difference with Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency from making a money transfer from your bank? So you still need to have a bank. So what I do right now, I do a money transfer. I go into my bank account, send the transfer to whoever it is. They accept it, all is well. So what is the difference from doing this as opposed to what you're showing us here?
So, thank you for the question. So, when somebody sends Bitcoin to another individual, there's no bank involved. It's like a cash transaction. It's like you actually giving me Canadian dollar bills. So there's no third party involved except it's in digital form. Yeah, and it's immediate as well, right? Did I not understand your question, perhaps?
I hear what you're saying, but you have to have money somewhere sitting there to do this. It's not going to be coming out of the air. So where do you start from to get the money from point A to point B? If it's not your bank, where is it coming from?
If I could assist Your Worship through you to Councillor Payne. So if you think of the Dr. Hill example from the video earlier, Dr. Hill has a cryptocurrency bank account, essentially. He's holding cryptocurrency. So he already has a spot online that he can look at that tells him how much cryptocurrency he has. In the same way that you might have, or other people have, foreign currency holdings. So you might be able to look at a bank account that tells you how much US currency you have, or a bank account that tells you how many euros you have. So this is a bank account, essentially, that tells you how many digital currencies you have. And then the idea is to transfer directly from digital currency to digital currency. So in this case, a resident is saying, hey, I want to pay my digital currency that I already have in my digital currency account, because I was paid by somebody else in digital currency, and I'm going to use it and pay it to the town of Innisfil for my taxes. Coinbase then takes that digital currency and converts it right away to cash, to I should say, Canadian currency. So I think if you think about it as a way to look at what are your currency holdings, just like foreign currency, US currency, euros, in this case, it's a digital currency. I hope that helps, Your Worship.
Councillor Sadi?
Thank you. I just want to know risks to the town. Is there any risks? And if so, what are they? If I could start with that one.
Certainly, Your Worship, and members of council, through you to Councillor Sadi, because the town will never hold cryptocurrency in this initial phase of what we're talking about, the risk is almost zero. The Coinbase is the one who takes the cryptocurrency from the resident or the property owner and then converts it into cash, and then the cash comes to us. So in the same way that we digitally transfer funds with vendors, for example, we do e-payments directly, all of that is done in Canadian currency on our end, so we don't actually have to do that. And it's the user actually who bears any risk. So if the cryptocurrency moved for any reason in terms of its exchange rate, that's actually the user who's going to have to make sure that they have the right amount of digital currency to convert to Canadian. Coinberry and the town don't get involved at that level. It's actually the individual user who has to pick the right time to exchange their, to make that payment.
Okay. And just follow up, please. Just so that clarification that I'm understanding this correctly, value fluctuation. So I think in the example that was in our agendas, let's say $5,000 payment to the town, just as a payment option. They choose to use the cryptocurrency. The market fluctuates in the value. It is the resident themselves who is taking that loss. In the example used, if it was $5,000 in a fluctuation, would have been $50. However, if they were using a bank credit card at 2.9%, they would have paid $145 charge.
Exactly.
Okay. So, so then really it is just optional for residents. They still have all other methods to pay. Those who wish to use it can use it, those who understand it. No risk to the town. Okay, that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to maybe clarify a little bit in terms of what Carolyn was asking, at some point in time you have to purchase cryptocurrency. Is that correct? That's how you get your wallet.
May I answer the question?
Yes.
So there are various ways of purchasing cryptocurrencies. One, earning cryptocurrencies. Another, as was the example with Dr. Hill, and as is an example with very, very many companies that have distributed workforces. A lot of payments now take place. Payroll payments take place in cryptocurrency. So earning cryptocurrency. A lot of freelancers earn charge in cryptocurrency, especially freelancers that have international clients. Charging cryptocurrency. So earning, purchasing, having received Bitcoin as a donation. We work with a number of charities as well that we provide our solution to that receive donations in Bitcoin. So there's various methods of acquiring Bitcoin or cryptocurrency.
Okay, I don't know if that helped at all in terms of that if you wanted to do it, Carolyn, you'd have to purchase or have some other way of getting that cryptocurrency. I was just trying to clarify that point. On a couple other questions. Is liability. Like when I go to a bank and I put money in the bank account, I know the bank has $60,000 insurance in case something happens. Because there is an hour, I think it was mentioned in the report in terms of transaction time, that if something happens, I know it also said that hacking is very difficult, but if something does happen, because not only is your company very innovative, but there's a lot of hackers out there who are also very innovative. So my question is there any insurance or liability with using your company Bitcoin?
Right, so we do have banking in Canada, so our bank accounts are insured, CDIC insured, like all bank accounts are. So all of Innisfil funds that will be landing in Canadian dollars into our bank accounts are fully insured as per CDIC requirements.
Okay, and one last question. In terms of, there are other companies which do this, but they're all dealing in the same currency, which I assume is Bitcoin, in terms of, so, because there's other platforms besides Coinberry that do this. So I'm viewing this as, Coinberry is like a banker, doesn't charge nearly as much money, but there are other banks or companies out there who do the same thing.
When you say do the same thing, what are you referring to?
In terms of what Coinberry does, in terms of offering a platform for municipalities to use.
So we are not aware of any cryptocurrency companies in Canada that currently offer this at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I was thinking along the same lines as Councillor Waters. I can remember not too long ago we had a presentation from with regards to our sixth line development, where there was a new way for us to process services for septic or in lieu of a regular sewage plant. And there was some concerns that just by them presenting this idea that they would kind of cancel themselves out because, as you know, municipalities always need to tender everything out. So that was my question. to you or to staff, it seems to me there's, this is a little bit different, but I'm not sure how. Or is there other options where we would say, tender it out and say, we pick you because you've been in business longer, you've got cheaper fees or whatever? So that would be my question.
Mr. Rayner?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Ices. It's an excellent question, and I'm glad you're asking it. The procurement side of the story is really one that we're watching very closely because of our treaty obligations. So you'll notice in the report that this is a one-year pilot program. So it's designed to be able to test this new model, work out any bugs, learn from this experience, and then presumably at the end of that year, if council is pleased with the results, there would be a tendering or an RFP type process at the end of that year to learn from it. And this is the same model that we used with Rover, the same model we've used with Uber. Staff worked in collaboration with a private party to create a public-private partnership to trial a new way of doing things, and certainly the same kind of opportunity would present itself to Newterra, I think was the name of the company at the time that was presenting the option, but here, as you see, there's a partnership that's already been negotiated that's being presented to council for consideration with a timeline around it for how long it would last and then what the appropriate procurement procedures that would kick in after that trial period. So that's sort of the navigating piece. Certainly our procurement department under Mr. Davis's direction has reviewed this and is comfortable with this one-year pilot project. It fits within our procurement procedures to be able to do that trial, to really decide what it is that we want and what that we need in this case.
Mr. Ices, Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. So if I understand this correctly, we get through our one-year pilot project, and if there are other, if the landscape is changed the way we see it with this being more popular, we could decide to put this out to tender and then decide if we want to stay with Coinberry or to achieve the same outcome for what we're doing.
Mr. Davis.
Your Worship and members of council. So in a year, this pilot project will allow us obviously to work out some kinks in terms of accepting the payments and the processing. In a year, it's possible that we may just open up payment opportunities to all people that are in this. I mean, right now people can pay their taxes through any bank in Canada using any platform that's available to them. So the option there, but certainly we want to explore potential opportunities down at that point in time, whether there's, kind of like partnering up, as Mr. Rayner has said, with Uber, and is there opportunities down the road. But I think the opportunity in a year, if there are other platforms, is that people then can start using those methods as well. We don't even really have to be engaged.
Councillor Ices, were you finished?
Just another question regarding cryptocurrencies. So the cryptocurrency of choice is Bitcoin right now, and you mentioned some other choices. I might date myself a bit, but I'm thinking of the beta VHS example where this one might be superior, but everybody wants this one. So if the cool kids are using something else, we're stuck with Bitcoin for now. How would that work?
Right. So may I answer the question? So Coinbase as a platform, we transact in 4 of the major cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin being only one of them. What we're discussing with staff is starting with Bitcoin, but we would be able to provide options to accept tax payments in other cryptocurrencies as well.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few questions again. More and more I think about it, more and more questions I have. How does Coinberry get paid? In terms of, you don't do this out of the goodness of your heart, so it's your business. You're in it to make money. So how do you make your money?
Right. So Coinberry charges a flat spread or fee on the cryptocurrency that they convert into Canadian dollars, of 0.5%.
And that's paid by the user?
And that's paid by the user, that's correct.
Okay. Another question, laundering. And I've heard stories about, this is a great way for organizations, criminal organizations to launder money. What type of regulations or ways of regulating that type of thing? Because I don't think the town of Innisfil wants to be involved in that type of transactions if they're easily accessible to that group of individuals or companies.
Right, that's a wonderful question. And we are registered with FinTrack, which the acronym is very long, but it's the Financial Transaction Analysis Center of Canada. So we are required by law and by regulation to have in place anti-money laundering procedures and policies, which we follow very vigorously. And our banking partners work with us very closely in identifying attempts of fraud or anything of that nature on the platform. So we work very closely with our banking partners. And again, in full compliance with regulations, all reporting to FinTrack is done by the team. We have our Director of Brokerage Operations here as well, whose team is responsible for compliance with FinTrack requirements. And FinTrack is something that the banks are regulated by as well.
Okay, great.
It's the same body.
Okay, great, thank you. And just one last question. I don't like asking this question, but because it relates to the disruption we had first thing, where the gentleman mentioned that there was an association between Coimbury and our resident who lives on Lake Simcoe. So I'm just, since that was a seed put in my ear, I don't know if that's the case. Is there an association between the two organizations?
Just for, at least from our point of view, from clarity's sake, we do not sponsor anything that has anything to do with any developments that happen in Innisfil.
Okay, I asked that because I heard it and I just want to make sure it was, okay, thank you.
I think it was just a misunderstanding, I believe, but if we could, I'm sure there's probably more questions, but we're going to have an opportunity to debate this evening when it comes up in our agenda, and I'm not sure if you and your team are able to stay around to hear that debate.
Of course.
Okay, that's wonderful. Then, if you don't mind, because we do have a special presentation for us right now, so if we could recess and go out, I think we're going to the hallway, are we? And, okay, sure, I'll pass that first, but after we recess, we'll go out to the hallway for a presentation and then come back in for our, what looks to be a very lively public meeting, which we'll be having at 6:30. So I need a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation with thanks, and that's from Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Nicol. All in favor? And that's carried. And I want to thank you very much for attending, Mr. Pavlikov?
That's close enough.
Okay, sorry. Thank
Your
you.
Worship.
Thank you.
Members of Council.
meeting after that really wonderful, energetic break. And we'll start our public meeting as soon as we have a clerk to do the record. So the planning public meeting, I'm going to start with the preamble. And this is, if it sounds a bit like a script, I'm reading from a script, it's because I am. The Planning Public Act is quite prescriptive, and so we'll go through this process. For the planning public meeting, anyone may come to the podium and they'll have 5 minutes to express their questions or concerns. Then staff will respond where possible. Should anyone need to speak for a second time to identify an issue that has not already been raised or receive clarification, they may be allowed another 5 minutes at the podium. The planning public meeting on tonight's special council is concerning a proposed amendment to the Our Shore Community Permit System bylaw number 062-17 in accordance with the Planning Act. The land affected is municipally known as 1325 Maple Road in the town of Innisfil. We will now hear from the clerk on how the public notice of this meeting was provided.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of this public meeting was posted on the property and circulated on February 27th, 2019, to all agencies and landowners within 120 meters of the area affected. The notice was also posted on the town's website on March 6, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Has any correspondence been received by the Clerk's Department concerning this proposed amendment?
No correspondence received.
We will now hear from Mr. Galen Pierce, placemaker planner, who will provide a summary of the planning context of the application. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Pierce.
Thank you. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public, the purpose of this public meeting is to consider an application for Shoreline Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment on lands known municipally as 1325 Maple Road. The application was submitted to permit a sleeping cabin with a washroom on the second story of an existing boathouse to be used seasonally between the months of May and October. The application was deemed complete as a zoning bylaw amendment last year on August 16th and was later converted into a shoreline bylaw amendment this winter following the enactment of Our Shore in January. This map shows the location of the subject lands, which are located just north of the settlement of Lefroy-Belle-Ewart. They are located between Maple Road and Lake Simcoe, south of a town-owned lake access point. The slide above shows a rendering of the existing boathouse facing east towards the lake. There's a first-story boat access door as well as an external second-story stair access to a windowed storage space and deck area. The structure was permitted in 2013 for a boathouse and a second-story storage use. The LSRCA required a restrictive covenant on the property at that time, prohibiting the alteration of the boathouse, the provision of servicing to the boathouse, or living areas in the boathouse. The purpose of the amendment application is to create a site-specific provision permitting the requested use on that site, subject to specific use restrictions as clarified by the proposed bylaw amendment text, which is attached to the report. The above plan shows the location of the existing boathouse in red, located on the waterfront yard, and is entirely on land. The Lake Simcoe is to the right there. There are several documents that are required to be reviewed when planning departments assess community planning permit system amendment applications. These documents include the provincial policy statement, growth plan, Lake Simcoe protection plan, and the town official plan. The appropriateness of the proposed application has been considered within the context and character of the area and evaluated against the relevant policies of the applicable plans and policies at the time of this public meeting. The proposal has been found to be consistent and conformant to these policies when subject to the use provisions proposed by the LSRCA. The official plan land use designation is Lake Simcoe Shoreline and Countryside within Schedule A, and Shoreline Residential and Natural Environmental Area on Schedule B12 of the official plan. The lands are also located within areas shown on Schedule A of shoreline of the Our Place Community Planning Permit bylaw, which means that it is subject to those provisions. As described in detail in the supporting staff recommendation report, the consideration of the appropriateness of the boathouse, of the proposed site-specific use, was distilled to two central principles. Development shall be designed to limit disturbance to the shoreline and the lake, and the safety of persons and property from natural hazards is the top priority. Though future considerations of requests for other amendments on other sites may reveal other significant competing considerations, in this specific circumstance, the rationale for maintaining a prohibition on shoreline sleeping cabin uses and the separation of boathouse uses and other uses was by and large informed by these two principles. There's a public safety matter associated with constructing habitable space along the shore, and there's a public interest matter of maintaining an ecologically functioning shoreline habitat. The full consideration of these and other matters is found in the report. The matter of preserving the ecological function of the shoreline can be qualified in this specific case. The boathouse in question is an existing structure permitted in 2013 and constructed in 2016. Nominal disturbances associated with connecting the structure to water and wastewater services could be managed by erosion, runoff, and sedimentation control measures, and offset by shoreline naturalization requirements to the extent feasible through the subsequent shoreline permitting process. Approval would result in a net benefit of shoreline vegetation on this property. Conditions required by the Conservation Authority will be attached to the subsequent permit and include the following actions: limiting the use on the second story to one sleeping cabin, limiting use of the cabin seasonally between the months of May and October, prohibiting a kitchen from being constructed, and prohibiting a dwelling unit from being constructed. Further, these restrictions will be placed on the site-specific provision in Section 6 of our shore and registered on title on a updated restrictive covenant with the LSRCA at their request to ensure future owners are aware of the restrictions on the site. The proposed Section 6 site-specific provisions text transfers these restrictions as required by the LSRCA into the bylaw on a site-specific basis. They can be found attached to the report. In addition to the initial circulation conducted after the last summer's zoning bylaw amendment application, which proposed the same changes as the current amendment, a second full agency circulation and town staff circulation of this application was conducted. The LSRCA submitted its full comments, issued support, subject to conditions discussed in this presentation and in the report. Also, during the zoning amendment last summer, 23 consent letters from neighbors were collected and submitted to the town. Each letter contained the name of a resident, the address, the signature and date, and each letter contains the same text, acknowledging the requested amendment, proposed uses, and stated consent for the application. These letters have been included in consideration of the shoreline bylaw amendment. Planning staff have received these letters and considered them as a reflection of the non-conflicting character of the existing structure. In terms of next steps, planning staff will attempt to address questions and concerns raised by council and the public during the course of this meeting. If no substantive concerns are raised which cannot be reasonably addressed, planning staff suggests that the recommendations of the report be adopted. If there are issues which require further consideration, the appropriate course of action would be to delay a decision until an update can be brought to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pierce. Is there anyone here this evening to speak on behalf of the applicant? Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, I appear this evening on behalf of the applicant, and in attendance with me, beside me, is Carolyn Kellington of MHBC Planning. Mr. Siegler is here with his daughter, and they're seated over there. I don't intend to make a lengthy deputation. We're both here to answer any questions. We concur with Galen's report assigned by Mr. Kane. The staff report speaks for itself. This is a site-specific matter It's been going on for over a year and a half. There are 23 letters of support. There have been 2 public open houses with no objections. This is the 2nd public meeting with regard to this matter. And we comply with the Lake Simcoe Protection Act, the provincial policy statements, the county official plan, the town's official plan. And again, this is a site-specific matter with a dry boathouse on land with full services. Again, there are restrictions with regard to the use of the property in the winter, and we concur with that. We have met with the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. We've drafted a restriction agreement, and we intend to abide by it. So if you have any questions at any time, or if members of the audience have questions, we're here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Geest. We will now hear from those who have questions regarding the proposed application. We'll hear first from the public and then from council. I would ask that each person addressing council please come forward and use the microphone, and please state your name for the record. Is there anyone here with a question or concern regarding this application? I'll ask again, is there anyone here with a question or any concern with this application? Seeing none, I'll then go to council. Questions from council. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Worship. Just one question. The main residence, is it a year-round home? No? Okay, so you're just there for the summer? Okay.
We're going to ask the questions.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, it's Mr. Siegler's cottage. He uses it as a cottage.
Okay.
It can be used year-round, but it's not.
Okay.
All right.
So my getting down to the main one, it being a sleeping cabin, it can't be rented as a cottage, so it wouldn't be used as a B&B. It's strictly for family use.
I can assure you that it will not be used as a B&B. One, this is a family compound. If you've been on the site, and I'm sure other members of council have been on site, this is a family compound. My client is Orthodox. One of the main reasons why he wouldn't be there in the winter is because the synagogue is not open during the winter months, but there is no intent to rent it out whatsoever. His family is growing, his grandchildren are there, and this affords him the opportunity to be with them in a family surrounding.
Thank you. I just want, I sort of figured that, but for other people that don't know that, it's kind of nice that they know the situation.
My pleasure to confirm it.
Thank
Councillor.
you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Other questions? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions that I have is that when the boathouse was originally constructed, at that time, there was a 2nd floor put on it. At that time, was the intended use just for storage, or was it for eventually to have, and was that part of getting the permit that it was not to be used for sleeping purposes?
Well, as a matter of fact, that's an excellent question, because there's a restriction that was registered on title in 2013, which said it was for storage only. And anyone can see if they visited the site, we've abided by that. That was the intent. But again, the family has grown. We're on full services. The boathouse is a dry boathouse. It's not over Lake Simcoe. It's protected by a major break wall. And there's the answer to your question, I believe.
So what I guess what I'm trying to get at is that if the building got its permit to build based on the fact that it was not going to be used for sleeping quarters, and then anyone could say, well, it's not going to be used for sleeping quarters, but 2 years later change your mind and get a site-specific amendment to that. So I guess my concern is that it's been asked under the first building permit to get it as storage, and coming back. So I'm worried what the precedent it sets for other properties, for builders. Somebody say, well, I'll just use it for storage, with full intention of 2 years down the road of converting it into sleeping quarters.
Sir, we could build any building on the land as long as it complies with the zoning bylaw and the official plan. And then we could always come to the Committee of Adjustment and ask for it to be enlarged, or come to you for a zoning bylaw, if a rezoning, if we want to enlarge it even more than the Committee of Adjustment. So anything can be changed, okay, at any time. What your ideas today could be changed 5 years from now. There was no reason in 2013 to put a bedroom in there. We covenanted then that we wouldn't do it, and we just went through this entire process of one, hiring me, all right, hiring a planner, meeting with all the appropriate authorities to change the use. It's gone through the Planning Act procedures, and I submit to you that at any time, any one of your buildings that you may own, you may want to change on it. You might want to put a commercial site in your garage, all right? And you might have to come to the Committee of Adjustment later on. So the process has not been flaunted at all. We have acted in good faith. This is now 2019, not 2013. And we didn't do anything against what we promised we would do 6 years ago.
Anything else, Mr. Waters? Councillor Waters, sorry. Other questions? Councillor Sadi.
Just some, thank you, Your Worship, just some comments on that, because I was one of the ones that commented on the application before, and part of my misunderstanding at the time was that the boathouse was partially in the water, and that based some of my views. I have since visited the site, which gives you a bigger picture. So to see that it's a large family, a large piece of property with 2 cottages, and this structure, which is all on the land, nothing in the water, just rails that go into a water to bring a boat in. And what I like about right now is the fact that the wastewater connection, certainly for a washroom to sleep, so it's not a kitchen. It's a washroom request. It eliminates the sewage contaminants to the lake as per the report. And the fact that the owner is going to increase shoreline vegetation improves the shoreline, which it's not even impacting to add a washroom, the shoreline now. So I think that, benefits the health of our lake. I think of many other cottages that they've turned their garages into a bunkie without ever putting an application into the town or getting permits. So that's happening with, of course, they may not have washrooms, but I guess the clarification is from bunkie would be sleeping quarters and a washroom only, no kitchen.
No kitchen.
Correct. Okay. And certainly the quote of low-intensity recreational use made me think of second dwelling units that we permit in certain locations that can accommodate it. And certainly as families want to grow and have their grandchildren come, and family use does increase. So I certainly have changed my mind on this one, and it has my support.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Nicol?
Thank you, Worship. Obviously, just seems only a year ago that we were going through our shores and finally got that all passed. And in that document, obviously, boathouses were not to have any sleeping, cooking, or living areas or washrooms in that. I understand this is site-specific, and that's why you're here tonight. With that,
But besides that, Councillor, this application was put in.
Sorry, Mr. Gee, just let Councillor finish his question before you speak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Again, this is site-specific. I'm wondering, is there any inspection? And if so, would there be a yearly fee to determine that there are no cooking facilities or living areas that are being utilized in this sleeping cabin or bunkie?
Do you want to inspect it from time to time? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just wondering if there are any provisions, sorry, Worship, if there are any provisions for inspection, as this is a site-specific one. where, to ensure that there are no cooking or living areas that are being utilized.
Mr. Pierce or Mr. Scarrett?
Through your worship, to help address council's questions with respect to inspections. Inspections under the Ontario Building Code would be applicable for the change of use from storage areas to the sleeping quarters. Those inspections would have to follow those procedures mandated by the Ontario Building Code. There is no follow-up inspections other than if there were potentially any complaint-based issues that would be addressed through our bylaw enforcement office. And just to backtrack a little bit with respect to Councillor Waters' questions, yes, this is a one-off, very, very, very rare circumstance that this application did come in before the enactment of the Our Shore document, and it was proceeding, as Mr. Geese has said, through the necessary channels under the zoning bylaw, which was in force and effect at that time. However, when the Our Shore document did come in place in January 8th, this was one of the ones, the one, caught in limbo with respect to uses. Hopefully that helps clarify some of those concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol, you're finished. Councillor Waters?
Thanks for that comment. I just wanted to make sure this is a one-off, because the whole purpose of Our Shores was to prevent future boathouses, those types of things on the shoreline, because I want to see a more natural landscape as opposed to boathouses after boathouses along that shoreline. So as long as this is a one-off, and this is the last one this will be the last one that we see, I will be okay with it.
Seeing no other questions of council, if you have not made oral or written submissions in regard to this proposal before a decision is reached, you should be aware that the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss your appeal. If no concerns regarding the application are heard, please be advised the proposed amendment to the Our Shores Community Permit System bylaw will be considered by council this evening under item 4.2 of the special council agenda. If for any reason this bylaw is not fully considered this evening and you wish to be contacted before further consideration by council, please fill out the notification form located by the entrance to the council chambers. Council thanks everyone for their participation, and we will now continue with item 4.2 of the special council meeting. Councillor Arsetti.
I'm just looking to the clerk for clarification that item number 2 in this is that the permit be passed.
Yes, that's what I said, Councillor Arsetti. It said that if there were no concerns. So I heard some concerns at the table, but it can go to a vote. There was no concerns from the public. So we'll put the recommendation on the floor, and then if there's further debate, that's fine, and then we'll take a vote. Is that okay? Okay. So we need a mover and a seconder to put the proposed bylaw amendment on the floor. Is there sorry, Councillor, I've got to get my councillors and my Mr. straightened up here. Mr. Rayner.
Thank you. I've been called worse, Your Worship. Just very briefly, I think it is incumbent on us to note in the public record that the resident who thought the meeting was starting at 5:30, not 6:30, did attend. He expressed concern with this proposal. At least I think that's what he was saying. But after speaking with our staff, Mr. Scarrett, he better understood the proposal, and I understand he's decided not to put in any objection. But I think in the event that this goes anywhere, we don't want anything in the way of this moving forward. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for that, for the record. Thank you. So now I'm looking for a mover. A moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Arsetti. Any further debate on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? That's carried. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Thank you. Now we'll have a recommendation for our confirming bylaw that confirms the items we dealt with in special council. Moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Payne. All those in favor? That's carried. An adjournment for the special council meeting, moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That's carried. We have 3 minutes break before we go into council. Council and staff and the audience and the press, thank you everybody for being here tonight. It's great to see such a good crowd out, and to those watching online, welcome to the 7th council meeting of this term of council. That includes 6 business meetings plus our inaugural meeting. And as such, I just wanted to point out that we've took office just a little over 100 days ago. So in light of talking about getting a lot accomplished in our term, I just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about our 100 days accomplishments. So we have approved a 2-year service-based budget. We've implemented live streaming of all our council meetings. We've developed our municipal cannabis strategy. We've approved the planning applications for Tollendale Village. We've implemented a number of new council committees, including a brand new one for Innisfil Beach Park improvements and a Farmers Advisory Committee, as well as reinstating a very popular Traffic and School Zone Safety Committee. We've launched our Rover parking pilot, and we've launched a Women's Entrepreneur Social Night and a Small Business Accelerator program. We opened a new skating rink in Cookstown. We recognized all of our snow angels across the community, and we held our first council open house. We secured additional fundraising dollars for the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center, which will be opening soon, and we played host to 3 of Ontario's ministers. So I think that's a lot of work done for the first 100 days, and I'm looking forward to the next 100. I'm going to ask everybody in the audience tonight, if they've got their cell phone with them, if they could please turn it on mute or silent, and advise you that public comments made during this meeting are both audio and video recorded and shall form part of the public record, which will be retained according to the town's procedural bylaw. And for more information, you can see the clerk's office about what that bylaw entails. So our first item of business tonight is open forum, and we've had one person sign up for the open forum, and that would be Adam Scruton on item D7, which is the Bel Air Beach Road flooding. Mr. Scruton, please come on up, and if you wouldn't mind, use the mic, and we'll happy to listen.
So I live on Bel Air Beach Road, and for the past 3 springs...
Mr. Scruton, I'm sorry, if I could just interrupt for a second, maybe go to that mic so you're close to it, because we are live streaming, so there'll be people at home who will want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. I live on Bel Air Beach Road, and for the past 3 springs, we've experienced flooding of increasing magnitudes. We reached out to the town last year. Nothing was done in time to cause more flooding again 2 weeks ago. Last year, I ended up taking the day off of work in preparation for the incoming weather and possible flooding. It ended up leading to a week off work. Obviously, the emotional toll on myself and all members of my household. We just got married in December. We're looking forward to it. New year, new, fresh, something new. And we flooded 2 weeks ago, and we still have not got a complete cost of repairs at this time. They're still diagnosing how bad the flooding is, but it's getting worse every year, ma'am.
Thank you for that. I totally understand. It's something that we've been dealing with historically for many, many years. And hopefully you can stay for item D7 when we have that conversation. Thank you for your comments. And congratulations on your wedding. So now we'll approve the agenda. Is there a mover and a seconder for the agenda for March 27th? Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Waters. Any amendments or agenda repair required? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosures of interest from any members of council? I see none now, but if one becomes apparent to you, please let us know and we'll have the clerk record it. And first, our first presentation is from our lovely dancers this evening, the Miller's School of Irish Dance.
Good evening, Council, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm here representing the founder of the Miller School of Irish Dance, Maureen Miller. The Miller School of Irish Dance, founded by Maureen Miller in 2006, has been such a successful dancing school. I've been with them for 10 years and I absolutely love it. Our Irish dance dresses, the ones that we're wearing right now, are our school dresses. My girls over there in the purple dresses, my dance teacher's favorite color is purple, and this is the chosen color. As you can see, the school dresses are very intricate, which means they're also very expensive. The school dresses ensure that all of our participants can participate in all of our shows, such as this one, and they can also compete without having to buy one. The dance dresses are passed down throughout the school. Once a dancer grows out of it, we are either able to get a new one or an older dancer can pass it down. So, such as myself, may be able to pass it down to Tegan. Raise your hand, Tegan. So once I grow out of this one, it may be able to go to her. Last year, after 12 years, since we've been around since 2006, our old dresses were getting a little tired, need of replacement. Our school needed $20,000 to do the replacement. The Miller Parent Association and the dancers did a bunch of fundraising. Lots of chocolate-covered almonds were sold. We did our best. The discretionary grant given by the council from the town of Innisfil granted $2,500, and it was an amazing help. We were able to pay for 4 dance dresses for our residents here in Innisfil. We would again like to thank you all for your assistance, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much to all of you for coming out tonight and showing your appreciation. When we give out these grant dollars, it's hard-earned money that we're giving out, and it's so great to see it being used wisely and to see how much it's appreciated in the community. And if you weren't here earlier, I want to tell you that the Miller School of Dance gave us a little show out in the lobby earlier, and I want to thank you all for that as well. Thank you. So we have a recommendation to receive the presentation, moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Payne. All those in favor? That's carried. Our next presentation is Kim Woodland from Matthews House Hospice. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Woodland.
So to start the presentation, I believe we have a video, and we're here to thank the Council of Innisfil for supporting Matthews House with operational dollars, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But first, we would love to take you on a tour of our new facility in South Simcoe. So, if technology works.
Welcome to Matthews House Hospice and our new Centre of Excellence, built for the community, by the community. We are a home for compassion in the heart of South Simcoe that offers both residential-based care to people in the last stages of their lives and community-based programs for people dealing with grief or a life-limiting illness. Construction of the $6 million building began in June 2017 and was completed 1 year later. Our new Centre of Excellence is just under 27,000 square feet and is Ontario's newest hospice. Transfer personnel will drive under the heated portico on the Wellington Street East entrance, with all patients being welcomed through the front doors. Let's begin on the first floor, our residential floor. As we enter the Gibson family lobby, you will notice the open, light-filled atrium where one of our many volunteers will greet you. You will notice the spectacular glass-blown flower garden on the east wall. The DeWitt and Mary Chandler Memory Garden is a display of honor, hope, and healing, and is a tribute to the legacy of your loved one. The Patricia Waggle Reflection Room off the lobby is a warm, welcome area for you to gather, relax, and to learn what hospice is all about while viewing the beautiful gardens. Let's go to the heartbeat of the hospice, Kathy's Kitchen and dining area, where we can also explore the Flatto Great Room, where families can gather, converse, and share. Enter the Marv Chantler residential wing with 10 private bedrooms. Each room is equipped with a state-of-the-art hospice bed, wardrobe, television, washroom, and day bed for loved ones to stay in the room with patients. The gardens on the east side of the building are an oasis. All patient rooms have doors that swing wide open to allow beds to be wheeled out into the sanctuary. Sprinkled through the gardens are memorial benches in honor of loved ones past. The gardens will be maintained with love by volunteers and include pathways, butterfly gardens, new trees, a water feature, and the Jim Milligan gazebo, complete with barbecue. The M&M Library sits amidst the rooms to offer a space for conversation, education, and family gathering. The Bucko Family Nurses Station is where you will find our professional team of nurses, PSWs, and volunteers, along with our medical director and intake coordinator. Welcome to the second floor, our community hospice floor, offering programs for all, including grief and bereavement counseling, caregiver support, art programs, wellness therapies, and so much more. The atrium is appreciated here as the light shines in and the flowers of the memory garden adorn the wall. The Morning View Foundation Lookout offers a space to gather while enjoying the outdoors and the garden view. This is the Honda Canada Foundation Community Wing. Our Manager of Gifts and Gratitude is here to answer any questions you may have regarding donations and our fundraising programs. Donor stewardship and events offices complete the gifts and gratitude department. Let's enjoy the Frank and Sally Taylor Great Room with its warming kitchen where you can make your favorite beverage and enjoy the relaxing area with the stone fireplace. Staff offices are down the first part of the hallway with the volunteer coordinator, our CEO and assistant, finance, meaningful living, and grief and bereavement coordinators. Along the way is the Vanderzag Family Room, a peaceful gathering space for clients and families. Across the hall is the Frank and Sally Taylor Library, where the history and memories of the origin of Matthews House Hospice will be displayed. The Debbie Hudson Reflection Room, powered by St. Elizabeth Foundation, is a tranquil space that invites you to take a moment to reflect and perhaps document your feelings and thoughts. We are honored that this is the first permanent reflection room in Canada. The John and Jean Somerville and Family Program Room is a multi-use space that can be divided in two with a rolling wall. This area will host many activities, education opportunities, and events. The Wood Ing Therapy Room offers clients the chance to relax and experience wellness therapies such as massage, Reiki, and reflexology. Our Community Care Coordinator and Team Lounge round out our second floor. We welcome the greater community to our very active lower level. Starting with the music room, the piano and other instruments are available for those talented people who would like to relax and express through music. With an inventory of rolling tables and chairs, our gathering and event spaces can be set up for any event, such as education sessions, celebration of life events, and meetings. The rooms include media room, gathering spaces, event spaces, spiritual care space, youth and playroom, and counseling offices. There are 3 office spaces here that are available for rent for like-minded organizations. Our operating budget is $2.5 million annually. We are so grateful for the incredible support we receive, including $1 million annually from the government. But the rest of our operating budget is reliant on donations from community, corporations, and individuals. We have an incredible team of volunteers that are available to answer questions or help you in any way possible. Thank you to our community for your continued support. We look forward to continuing to deliver kind, compassionate care.
And we're here tonight to thank you, Innisfil. We are so fortunate for your support of our community-based programs. This is the second year of support that you have provided to us. And this year's program is for children, and we are developing and proceeding with that program for youth and kids here in Innisfil. So we're happy to be doing that. Up to about 10% of the families who receive services through Matthews House Hospice come from Innisfil, and we intend to do more, and we will do more for our community here. Our visiting community hospice program is thriving. Last year we served, or in this year, which ends this weekend, we will have served about 3,000 people, and about 10% of those come from this community, and we're so grateful for your support. We're also looking very forward to working in collaboration with the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center. We have high hopes for working with the team there to be providing any and all of the wellness programs that we provide in the site that you see there in Alliston within the Rizzardo space, if we should be so lucky. So we want to thank you, and we are looking forward to the future and what the future holds for us providing services for the folks in Innisfil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Woodward. Thank you for the film. I've Been invited a few times to visit and tour and haven't made it there yet, so it was great to have the virtual tour here this evening. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Waters.
I just want to make a comment that I think hospice is one of the best things that's happened in Ontario healthcare in a long time. I lost my brother 5 years ago when he spent his last few days in hospice in Mississauga, and it was one of the most wonderful places that he had an opportunity to spend, and we had an opportunity to spend with him. So I think it's great work.
Thank you. Thank you. Other comments? Seeing none, I have a recommendation to receive the presentation. All mover and a seconder. Councillor Ossati and Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Next up is delegations. We have none this evening, and so the next thing is the County Council and different associations and committee updates from Council. So I'll start with Councillor Ossati and a County Council update.
I apologize, Your Worship, because I was there. It's a blur, and I have to actually bow down to you. I do not know how you handle this workload that you have. I didn't prepare my notes to present this evening, so if I can update another one. And just, and committee update, just that on the Innisfil Beach Committee, we started our first workshop or first committee meeting, and the committee was able to look at goals, look at their concerns, and with the help of our CAO, who facilitated that very well, narrower focus, and we're looking forward to that in the future. And just yesterday, our first meeting of the School and Traffic Safety Committee meeting, which addresses both traffic issues in the town as well as the issues surrounding the school zone areas and the consequences of the driving around there. And good attendance from the audience. We said that would be good to see that at council meetings as well. And that's all I have to update at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ossati. Just on the county issue for a moment, just to advise council that for many years, County Council has supported local hospitals by putting aside several $1 million. I think it's over $100 million now over the last many years. Just recently, they decided to have a similar, smaller, but similar fund for hospices. So the hospices are also being supported through your county dollars. So anyone else have Councillor Nickel?
Thank you, Worship. An NBCA meeting last Friday. The 2019 budget was passed with 91% board approval. We also endorsed the Conservation Ontario's recommendations to A, improve client service and accountability, B, increase approval speeds, and C, reduce red tape while continuing to carry out the mandate of the CA. And also in 2 weeks, the Spring Tonic Maple Syrup Festival is being held at the Tiffin Centre the 6th and 7th from 9:30 till 3 in Utopia. That's it.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Mayor. Reporting from the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. Our last meeting, we approved the annual budget for the RCA. The other thing, we also approved annual operating priorities, which included emergency mapping, enhanced sediment control, smart sustainable building practices, reporting environmental key trends, and climate change mitigation adaptation. They also mentioned that the sub-watershed plans are now all complete, so that will be important for our staff to review those and see what the watersheds have and what our watersheds are included in that. The most important thing that I really enjoyed was a presentation by Dr. Brian Ginn, who presented a presentation on the health of Lake Simcoe. And if you don't mind, I'll just like to take a few moments just to mention that. First of all, I would like to have, at some point in time, have Dr. Ginn come in and give the council and town a presentation in terms of the health of Lake Simcoe, in terms of where we're at. Are we winning? And so I think it would be really good to have him come in. But just a few things that he did talk about in terms of the health is that generally the health of Lake Simcoe is improving, and based on numerous stress factors that he talked about, the three key ones were basically phosphorus, invasive species, including mussels and aquatic plants, and climate change threats. So what was kind of interesting, they were all good news and bad news stories. On phosphorus, good news is that phosphorus concentrations in the lake are getting lower and lower to the point that that the water is relatively clear and swimmable. But it's the loading factor. We're not down to the 2026 standard for Lake Simcoe plan, so that we're still working on that. On the mussels part, which was really kind of interesting, I learned that the mussels in the lake can filter the entire lake in 3 days. Imagine if we had to purchase equipment to do that. But as every good story, a good part of the story, there's a bad part, is that the zebra mussels have now been replaced by quagga mussels, and they have increased dramatically throughout the lake. So zebra mussels have dropped from 85% coverage down to 14% coverage. Quagga mussels have gone from 14% coverage to 88% coverage in the lake. So that's an issue for marinas, intake valves, those types of things down the road, because they do present serious problems for those types of infrastructure components. On aquatic plants, again, it's a good news, bad news stories. We're having more aquatic plants which provide more habitat around the nearshore area. However, there is a plant which is called this starry stonewort, which is taking over all around the lake. And it's creating some serious problems because it doesn't increase good habitat for fish, and it clogs up shallow waters where fish can't even move through it. So it's a serious problem for boats and those types of things that we need to keep an eye on. And one of the things that they learned up in, I think it was up in Aurelia, is that when they were trying to get rid of milfoil and a couple other ones, they sprayed a herbicide into the lake to kill all those. What came back was the starry stormwort, which has just inundated the whole area and is not the nicest plant in the world to be worrying about. So on aquatic species, good news and bad news. And the last thing is climate change, and I think we all understand the climate change repercussions in terms of bigger storms, more runoff, more floods, which are going to affect our areas. So it's something that we need to keep an eye on, and so climate change adaptation mitigation is something that we need to, I think, include seriously in our next strategy plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who has a committee to report on? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also attended the Traffic and School Safety Committee last night, and just to echo Councillor Osadi's words, I was really surprised the input from the people that were there and the amount of people that were there. It was a lengthy agenda. We didn't get through quite all of it. I look quite forward to the next meeting because so many questions were asked and so many people with different ideas on school safety that it's going to be an interesting year to sit in this committee and listen to all the different ideas. I really think that we may have to even do it more than once a month because there's so much to do. And even if we only take one school at a time, we've got 11 schools, and one a month, that's the whole year just for one. And we're not going to make it in 1 year because we have a couple months break. So it's a very interesting committee, and like I said, I look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Waters?
One other item I did forget to mention was related to climate change, and that was because climate change has fluctuating temperatures during the wintertime, is that we get more ice, and the problem of putting salt on driveways and parking lots has become a serious problem. In fact, I think it's one of the more serious problems for Lake Simcoe, and they're suggesting that if we don't get salt management under control within the next 56 years, that Lake Simcoe will be void of life. So we have 56 years, well beyond my tenure here. So hopefully that we can start doing something. I know we do have salt management plans for our permit issues, so it's good to see, but I think there's a lot more that we need to do if we want to keep Lake Simcoe the way it is now.
Thank you, and thank you for your passion, Councillor Waters. Anyone else have comments? Under my role at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, I did attend a meeting on Tuesday with the Federal Minister of Infrastructure, Francois-Philippe Champagne, I believe is his name, and thanked him very much for all municipalities in Ontario that are going to be receiving a top-up to their gas tax funds this 1 year on a one-year basis, and also to discuss the incoming streams of federal and provincial funding that will roll out as the year goes on. So thank you. So a lot of work being done behind the scenes. We don't just sit up here once every other week at the council table. We're out and about in our community, and thank you to everybody for doing that. So the next part of our agenda is the consent list. So we've got a number of reports, meeting minutes, staff reports. So we'll go through that list. If council is comfortable with the recommendation that's in the agenda, we'll simply pass a consent motion at the end to adopt all of the recommendations as is printed in your agenda. If we want to have further debate or discussion, then we'll pull them and go into committee and have some debate over that. So we'll start on that list. So the first item was the special council meeting dated March the 13th. The minutes is okay. Next is the regular council meeting minutes dated March the 13th. That one's okay too. There were no reports of various committees, no standard requests. So next is a staff report, the first one being staff report D1, which talks about fire protection agreement with the ESSA, and this is a renewal. Just a comment on this one, all the costs are already reflected in the budget, and I agree with the one-year extension. Understanding this is some historical, just a historical comment on this. It's been many, many years that we've contracted ESSA to look after pieces of Innisfil that can be served faster by them. However, there are pieces of ESSA that could be served faster by one of our halls, but they have chosen not to take that route. But that's their choice and not ours. It's just been a real contention of mine for many years, so I thought I'd bring it up yet again. Next is the staff report regarding the workshop that we had tonight, the expanding payment options. Councillor Ices.
I'd like to pull that one for the committee.
Thank you. Next is the application or extension part lot for Marina Islands. That's the Friday Harbor. Any questions or comments about that one? Seeing none. Next is D4, the statement of council remuneration and expenses for year ending December 31st. Just one comment on that. For those members who are new on council, on April the 10th, staff will be doing a presentation to us on different opportunities for learning and how you prepare or how you get approval to use your council expenses to go to different learning opportunities or workshops. Next is D5, that is the smoking bylaw update. Councillor Orsatti.
Refer to committee.
Next is D6, the appointment of Integrity Commissioner. Again, for those new on council, I think we're going to have Mr. Mascarin come before us and give us another update. Mr. Clerk.
Your Worship, yes, it will be April 10th, same night we'll have the presentation on the council expenses.
Wonderful, thank you. Next is item D7, that is the Bel Air National Disaster Mitigation Program. Councillor Van Berkel.
I'd like to bring that to committee, Your Worship.
Thank you. Next is D8, the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center construction update. Very exciting, getting so close. Anyone want to pull that one? No? All right, and there is no other bylaws, and then correspondence, none received. So we'll move to the correspondence list for information. So G1 is the memorandum from the chief building official regarding online payments for building permits. Great job, Mr. Vickers, if you're here. Well done. G2, memorandum from the deputy clerk as to action tracking update. There was one question that we need to answer for that, so I'm going to refer that one to G2, please. G3 is also a memorandum regarding the municipal election overview. G4 is a proclamation for Autism Awareness Day. We're going to have a flag raising on April the 2nd for any of you who can attend. G5 is the Township of Tiny addressing the Premier regarding food insecurity. G6, Community Safety and Corrections Services, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plans. I think I'll refer that one as well, please, if I could. And finally, correspondence from Simcoe Shores Secondary School regarding their annual commencement. And again, I'm going to ask that to be referred to committee. Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if we could defer D8, the Rosardo Health and Wellness update to committee as well, on second thought.
Sure, we can do that. So if you could add D8 to that list. Okay, so that's all the correspondence list. Next is the recommendation that the consent list be referred to committee of the whole. We're going to add those items all in there. And we'll see if this matches with our own records. Great. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Nicol, Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That's carried. So now I need a motion to move into, to resolve into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Icey, second by Councillor Orsatti. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, and now we go to item 9.1, which was our supplementary, which was committee of the whole business from 2 weeks ago that we referred, and that is the fees and charges bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Payne, Councillor Waters. Questions or comments on the fees and charges bylaw? Thank you. I have one myself, if I could ask, and that would be regarding the Stroud all-day charge. I noticed it was about $95 to rent the Stroud Community Center more than it was to rent either the Churchill or the Lefroy, and they were the same hourly rate, but it was simply the full day rate that was more, and I just wondered if there was a reason for that. And I don't know who to direct that to. Mr. Inwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you would indulge me for a few minutes while I look that up, I will be happy to give you an answer. I'm going to need a few minutes, so maybe if you want to circle back.
Thank you very much. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last week or 2 weeks ago, Councillor Waters spoke very passionately and long on the fees for Uber, for transit fees. And I didn't say nothing at the time, but I kind of agreed with him because, you know, $1 raise, it doesn't sound like much, but for older people that are on pension and some of the widowers and widows that use the transit system, you know, 10 times a month, that's $20. And $20 to them sometimes make the difference of having breakfast or not having breakfast, or eating cat food, or being able to buy eggs. And I really think, you know, I feel that this should have been a budget item, and I know that you're going to tell me that it's a user's pay, and I understand that. But if we had a full-blown transit system and we had buses running and drivers, that would have been a budget item. It would have come to council, and we would have set a budget for buses, and we would have set a budget for drivers. We haven't got that. We haven't, you know, and I feel that after a budget is set, like 3-4 weeks later, or a month later, we come back and nickel and dime our people for another, actually, it's not nickel and diming, it's like almost 40% for transit fees. I would like that to go back and that our staff really look at this and maybe come up with some recommendations of how we can fix this system. I've always been in favor of this transit system. You know, Uber, it's a great thing, but there's something wrong with it. Some people abuse it, like the kids, to go down back and forth to get a coffee, you know, from school. Maybe there should be a spot where they got to walk a half a mile to before they get an Uber, and then, you know, that'll cut it back a little bit. But for the people that seriously need this, I believe it's a big, big hike, and I have a real problem with it. And that's my comment on this.
Councillor, any other, let's stick with the Innisfil Transit fares now then, and then we'll debate that, and then we'll move on to any other items anyone had. Councillor Payne.
I just have a question for the item F, which is it's $4 discount off regular fare will apply to other trip. Oh, just went now. Okay, charge of $3 for second seat on the same Innisfil Transit trip request. I was told before that if there is someone that needs assistance, whether it be physical or mental or whatever, and they have to have someone go with them on a ride, that they were to get either half price or some get free. Is that possible, or is that true? Because it's not that they want to be there in the vehicle, it's just they have to be there to assist the other person. So to charge them, of a large fee or the regular fee, is there some way that we can bring it down a little more?
Mr. Pentikainen?
Through your worship to Councillor Payne. Currently, that discount is in place through our partnership with Barrie Taxi for the accessible trips, but unfortunately through our partnership currently with Uber, that flexibility, it's a little more cumbersome, unfortunately, but there could be some discretion on behalf of the driver's account when that second person, that second seat is requested, but that's something that we can definitely reach out to Uber and discuss ways to offer some more flexibility there.
Councillor Payne?
Thank you. I think that would be appreciated. I know there's people that have vision issues that they do need to have assistance, and it can get very costly if there's two people that have to go in the vehicle. So that would be nice too. If we could do something like that, that'd be great.
Can I just clarify, though, that Mr. Pentikainen said, as of right now, if you use the Innisfil Taxi, the accessibility, that there would only be the one charge? So it's just a matter of, instead of using Uber, using the Innisfil Taxi. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also, as with Councillor Van Berkel, thought a lot about this discussion we had at the last meeting, and I think things have changed as far as the finances of this over the past couple weeks with the revenue increases we're going to get with the gas tax. But I guess stepping back a bit, the process that we've been asked to use here does seem a little bit backwards, because we approved the budget in January, and now it feels like we're adjusting the fees to address that. So I would agree with Councillor Van Berkel, and I would want to keep the fares as they are. The social help that we can give those people in our community who who are on the lower income side, and that the extra fare increase would really affect. I agree with that. I would go so far as to make a motion that we leave the fare increase as is with regards to the newfound gas transit tax money that we received the last couple weeks, and thinking that would assist in us meeting our budget.
Thank you, Councillor. I hate to put the pin in the balloon, but the gas tax top-up money that was announced with the federal budget is for roads infrastructure. The provincial gas tax money that we receive is for transit. As far as I know, we haven't received any, there's no bucket of money that we have now that we could use to replace that. I would ask the treasurer, so if the rates were to stay the same as they currently are with no increase, what would the, I'm not sure if it's Mr. Pentikainen or Mr. Davis, but what is how much money do we have to find, and where would you suggest we find it from?
Your Worship and Members Council, I believe, and maybe Mr. Pentikainen can correct me, I think in his staff report he indicated $200,000 exposure that we're running right now with the ridership. And so it's possible if council wants to hold the line on the current rates that are in there and not adjust them. We are looking at coming back to council very shortly with our year-end report, and so one of those recommendations could be to use any 2018 operating surplus to help subsidize this in 2019. Potentially then, we'd have to come back to council with a fulsome report. But ultimately, with the ridership, we either need to adjust rates or we need to adjust destinations or something along those lines, because we're kind of, it's very well received, and so we're experiencing that it's really being used extensively.
Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned in our last meeting when we were talking about this, it is a 40% increase. The one question I don't think I did ask was, what is the percentage? We have our destination fares, but we also, all the other fares that people, what is the average price that people are paying for that service? So it may cost them $10 to get to a location, and we give them a $5, $4 discount. What is the average price that those people are paying, and what percentage of that overall do they represent in the overall piece of this? Because, so, for most people, we're saying it's just $1, but that's still a 40% increase. For those other people who are paying $5, $6, $7, $8 to get to a destination, that's quite expensive. So my question is, what is the percentage of that group of people who use the service, and what is the average price they pay?
Mr. Pentikainen?
Through your worship to Councillor Waters, might need to do a little bit of digging into the percentage of trips going to flat fee destinations versus those that don't go to those. But generally, the average Uber fare, looking back to our last full month, so February 2019, the average Uber fare in total was about $13.40, with just under $9 that was covered by the town, and about $4.66 covered by the rider. Does that help?
Thank you. So I'm just saying that it is a premium service because they are going door to door. However, they are still paying more on the non-flat fee. They are paying more, a lot more than regular bus transit services. So those people are picking up a good portion of that fee, and to hit them with a larger fee for a public transit system, I think is a little bit unreasonable. And I think we need to find, because it is much cheaper than a bus, a system that we'd have to run, that we consider, what the budget is ahead of time. So I agree with what Councillor Isis was saying, is that, these things need to be switched around in terms of when we approve these types of things. So if it came to budget time, we would have said, well, let's allow an extra $200,000 in the budget to cover that, because I think it's an essential service. So just some comments.
Councillor Payne?
Just a question regarding the cap, the monthly cap of 30 trips per rider. Is that there for a specific reason? Are there people abusing the system?
Mr. Pentikainen?
Through your worship to Councillor Payne. Yes, so that's in place because we are seeing that a lot of trips are taken to and from the flat fee destinations. So someone taking a longer trip, they first come to, say, the YMCA, and then they book a second trip to get to their eventual destination. Definitely that's cheaper for the rider to make those multiple trips, but it is an increased subsidy for the town. So by putting that 30 monthly cap in place, that was to affect a small percentage of the riders. It was about 3 or 4%, but it would result in a cost savings because it would result in then more trips going direct to and from destinations.
Thank you, and I believe there was a mention in the report as well that if there was somebody who could request an exemption, say somebody who took it to and from work every day, and you know, we're not kind of taking advantage, quote unquote, of the system, that they could request an exemption from that. Thank you. I'm going to break in here for a moment just to say if there isn't the appetite to raise it for the full dollar, I still think we should be looking at some kind of an incremental increase. I think it's unreasonable to, you know, to put the entire, I think we should be looking at if you're not the dollar, at least a phase-in increase for two reasons, because it's reality, because there's inflation and prices are going up, and it's transferring less of the burden onto the taxpayer, but also because we still want staff to look at the additional destination. So if we don't provide some slack in the system, and we're talking about the most vulnerable of our population, which was the food bank, right? That was one of the destinations that we wanted them to look at. So, and I would argue the people that would have the hardest time paying the increase are also the people who would very much benefit from the food bank being one of the flat fee destinations. So is there any appetite amongst my colleagues to, if not the dollar, provide some kind of an increase? So it's, because we will have to do it. We know we are going to have to do it. We can't stay flatlined at this, you know, it's just not sustainable. So I think it would be easier to do it in small pieces than to have the large increase all at once. Councillor Orsatti, then Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Your Worship. My view on this before, and I'm just going over last council's amendment to this, whoops, I've just lost my screen, that we had it, in fact, it was myself that made the amendment, was that staff be directed to go back with options for subsidized transit to places that provide social benefit to key destination lists. And part of that is that we've got transit with flat fare fees to the rec center, to the town hall, but there's key places. People need to get groceries and health and dental, and my thought was the support of keeping the fee at the recommended dollar increase, because then maybe staff would be able to come back, look at even taking a portion of that into vouchers for those that really need it. Because if you're going to the food bank, you may not even have $3. So you need a subsidized voucher. And I would want to look at the staff report back on that, and that's where I was going with supporting the dollar increase. It may seem like a lot, but I think we have to look at those most vulnerable. Even $3 is difficult. And also concern to the taxpayers if we don't increase it.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. As I mentioned in the last meeting, obviously the Uber's been around for 2 years now. The council of the day didn't know where to start with that number. staff came to us with recommendations on how to try and make this work. One, to make it affordable that people would try it, and two, to make it that we weren't offsetting too much. In 2 years, we're looking to increase by $1 from a $3 trip to $4 to come to the town campus from anywhere in Innisfil. The BWG website right now, it's a $3 trip from only the four corners of Bradford, and you can't even get to the town hall by bus. I think we are fighting a very silly fight for $1 subsidy or to cost to get anywhere to the town campus, $5 to get to any GO bus on Yonge Street, and $6 to get from anywhere in Innisfil to the Southbury GO station or the 400 employment lands. I think the nickel and diming here should have been done at the budget table if that was the concern. This is not appropriate. This is a very small increase, and as Councillor Orsatti said, this will give us the opportunity to look at other destinations which do need that funding. So I hope that this council has the wisdom to continue on with this item the way it sits and looks to find some savings somewhere else. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Waters?
I guess I object to two things. One is that we say people are abusing it. If we were in downtown Toronto, we were in Barrie, people take the transit as much as they possibly want. Just because they have to go to a different destination doesn't mean they're abusing it. That's just the need that they have. And if people are taking advantage of what they're doing, it's because dollars, they don't have many dollars to be spending with. So that does bother me a little bit that we're saying people are abusing it when they're just trying to get to work, they're trying to get someplace within Innisfil. Two is the part of that it's only $1. It's still a 40% increase. Mary, you mentioned that we have to think about inflation. Well, inflation is 2%, it's not 40%. So I think that it's a much bigger chunk than most people can pay, the population that we're looking at. And most transit systems don't raise their fees by 40%. They have a more reasonable rate that they're doing. And the alternative to us is $35 a person, as opposed to what we're paying right now, $7 a person. So it's not a huge, it'd be a much larger subsidy if we took the traditional way, and instead, our staff came back to us with a very innovative way of getting people around this large jurisdiction that we have. And I think I think we should be looking at a proper budget item in terms of, in years to come, in terms of how much are we willing to spend on public transit in Innisfil, considering the geographic area that we cover.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
And I agree with Councillor Waters, except I also understand that we have to increase the fees. And if we did it gradually, maybe, 4 times over the year where we raise it 25 cents at a time, I could live with that. But, to raise it like 40% in one shot is like too much in my mind. I mean, if we could do it gradually, then I could live with it, but not what we have here. Sorry.
So the recommendation on the floor, there isn't one yet. If somebody is going to suggest one. Councillor Waters?
I recommend we leave the fees the way they are, and staff come back with an alternative way of finding the dollars to support it over the next 2 years. And in 2020, we decide at that point to raise the fees.
And do you have a seconder, Councillor? Councillor Van Berkel's the seconder. Any final comments before I call the vote on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That's lost. Any further recommendations? Can I ask the question now, Mr. Inwood, about the Stroud Community Center?
Yes, Your Worship. briefly, the difference between the cost for Stroud versus Churchill or Lefroy is based on occupancy. The Stroud facility can host up to 300 persons, whereas Churchill is at about 100 or 120, depending on the setup. So the costs are strictly based on occupancy.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the fees and charges bylaw? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? That's carried. Now we move on to the D2, which is the expanding payment option. Who brought that one forward? I'm sorry, I'm a little lost right now.
It was Councillor Ices.
Councillor Ices? Did you have
Yes.
a seconder, Councillor Ices? Councillor Sadi, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a very good presentation before this meeting about how this could work, but I have some concerns about moving this forward, and I understand the reasoning that we're Innisfil and we're innovative, but just the fact that we only have one company that can even attempt to do this, I think even though it says there's no risk to the town, I think there's risks to those using it because of the short time that this ability to pay by cryptocurrency has been available. So I wouldn't say no to this forever. I just have concerns that we may be too far ahead of the curve. So that's why I would not vote for this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Waters?
I agree with Councillor Ices that it is new. I am nervous, but I think I have enough assurance, and considering it's only a pilot project for 1 year, that I would feel comfortable for 1 year, and we review and how it went in terms of getting feedback from people who've used it, and also from our staff in terms of how it's gone. So I am nervous because it is new, and I'm a bit fearful that we're doing it just because it's innovative in town, and Innisfil wants to be innovative. But other than that, more and more people are using it, so I think a 1-year pilot would address my concerns that we have an opportunity to cut this off if we have to.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I do echo some of the concerns there. I did have concerns over virtual currency, but in reading the report, it's immediately converted to digital currency, or from digital currency to Canadian currency and deposited. So yes, I see no concern whatsoever with the pilot. Let's give staff the latitude to work with this. Again, whether Innisfil is too innovative, I don't think you can ever be too innovative. I think we've proven that with Uber. We've proven that with the Rosardo Health and Wellness Center that we control. I think this is another great thing that staff has brought to us, and I think we should look at the pilot, revisit it in a year, and see what needs to be tweaked. And that's it. Thanks.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also agree with Councillor Nichols. Bitcoin is not new. Maybe the innovation for Innisfil is new, but I think we should try it for a year. Go ahead with this pilot. It either works or it doesn't work, and it's not going to lose any. We're not going to lose anything on it. And there are several people in businesses that like paying by Bitcoin, so I would go for a 1-year pilot.
Councillor Sadi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, my comments to this, when it was first coming on our agenda, and before I started to read it, I thought, wow, this is way out there, and, you know, it's great being a town as entrepreneur, but I thought it was a little crazy. However, after listening to the presentation, my thoughts are that it's a payment option. So you don't have to use it. You have other methods to pay the town. There is no risk to the town. Those who are familiar with the technology are used to the conversion. The town does not pay any fees on that. For the users, it's actually less of a percentage to pay in cryptocurrency than to use a credit card. And there is a value fluctuation. I did ask in the presentation. The value fluctuation, when the money is deposited in cryptocurrency and then goes to the bank and then is paid to the town, there may be a value fluctuation in that rate. It is the user themselves that pays that fluctuation rate. But even based on using an example of $5,000, it would maybe be $50 extra in a fluctuation rate. However, that $5,000 at 2.9% credit card works out to $145. So it's still a cheaper method for the user. I like the fact that it's a pilot, an optional choice, and it saves the town money. So to me, it's worth it to try it as a pilot. No one's being forced to use it. It's an option. There is protection in it, and I was interested to find out that the stats I asked on age demographics is 25 to 30 and 30 to 60. So we are in the age of technology, everybody using their cell phones to pay for items, new different methods that we may not trust, but payment options, it should be there.
Any other comments? I think it's the way forward. My mother still won't use a bank machine. So, you know, we do have to move forward. I think that, you know, we are known now, whether we like it or not, as being the place to go to if you've got an innovative idea. And not all of them rise to the top. I'm sure there's many that are nixed before they get this far. But I applaud staff for the work they've done on this and providing just a further option to our residents. I look forward to exploring this. And as we've always said in Innisfil, we try it, and if we're going to fail, we fail fast and we move on. So if the pilot doesn't work, I'm sure that's what will happen. Any other questions? Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, just a point of order. I'm not quite sure, but I get the feeling that Councillor Ices doesn't really support this, and I wonder if we need another mover, possibly.
Do we want someone else to move this motion then? Councillor Ices.
Yes, Your Worship. From the discussion that we've had here since I first spoke, I probably have changed my mind on this. I will approve the motion. There is a bit of a other concern in the back of my mind that maybe we'll be just so innovative that we'll have all these types of presentations all the time. And I worry that maybe we do things just to be innovative. I'm pretty sure there were no residents that requested cryptocurrencies, but I could be corrected on that. But just the fact that this was innovative, that's why we're talking about it. So I would warn against just doing these things when there's no real need for it from the town. So that's my comment, and I'm fine with moving this motion.
Thank you very much. That's what good, healthy debate is about. All those in favor of the motion? Any contrary? That's carried unanimously. Next item is the smoking bylaw update. I believe that was Councillor Ossati.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I was just looking at the two options that were in this item, not that we want to continue laboring on about cannabis, but this is the smoking bylaw, and staff's one recommendation is not to follow the City of Barrie with what we had requested in addition with the, I'm just trying to find it here, sorry.
While you're trying to find that, I'm sorry, I didn't get a seconder,
Oh, I'm
Councillor
sorry.
Orsatti. Councillor Ices.
Councillor Ices.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Just that, I'm just trying to find the page here. Staff were not recommending that Barrie restrictions for store locations be included in this, which were the 300 meters of schools, 150 meters sensitive use locations, which we identified that we wanted to keep the same, that it was important. There was also a reference in the report that Barrie has not been one of the first 5 stores to receive a cannabis. I'm not concerned with being first to get a cannabis location. I'm concerned with doing it right, what's right for the public. I'm not a smoker and I'm not a user of cannabis, but for me, I just also wanted to question staff. When I looked at the map, removing, and if I could just get clarification, it was the residential zone restrictions. So 50 meters from residential zone. So if somebody wants to put a store in a residential area, it has to allow a commercial application to put that store in that area. Is that correct?
Mr. Pentikainen?
Through your worship to Councillor Orsatti, yes, that's correct. It would have to be within where a retail use is permitted as per our zoning bylaw.
Okay. And so I know that on the map, it was very few areas that did allow the stores. And I couldn't remember what our reasoning was with whether just following the Barrie 50 meters from residential zones. And I was wondering about removing that restriction, but I am in support of keeping in the application that not only is it not smoking cannabis in private residential areas only, but that it's important that we keep in that restricted areas for cannabis locations. And I want to bring that up for discussion with council.
Thank you, Councillor Orsatti. I'm going to offer a suggestion because I think this is something that members of the public will be very interested in. If this is something that we might defer till the next council meeting and then allow the public to have some comment on that, as well as to have a short presentation at the next meeting, particularly surrounding the area cannabis consumption will be restricted versus tobacco consumption is restricted, and who enforces what. The Smoke Free Ontario Act says it's the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit that regulates that, whereas we're looking for the cannabis consumption to be regulated by our bylaw enforcement. So the questions about where it should be consumed were asked in the questionnaire that went out some time ago now, and staff did kind of try to follow that when they came up with this suggestion. But again, I think it's not only for ourselves to wrap our heads around both retail location plus where it can be consumed, but also to have the opportunity for people who are interested in speaking to us about their thoughts. That'll give us some time to do that before we pass this. Councillor Waters?
Just one thing I would like to add to that. We, in the report, it talked about just restricting it to residential use. My question was going to be, does that then eliminate business, which is a bar, from having an outdoor patio and allowing cannabis use in that location? So does it restrict commercial smoking on properties which are designed for taking intoxicants?
Mr. Pentikainen?
Through your worship to Councillor Waters, I believe the Smoke-Free Ontario Act already would restrict smoking on a patio as well as a distance away from that patio. I believe it might be 9 meters in that circumstance. But the smoking bylaw, as we proposed it, it was looking to prohibit it in public spaces, such as commercial establishments as well.
So to defer it is seconded by Councillor Orsatti, and ask that staff provide a short presentation that would highlight where it's allowed, where it's not allowed, along with the process for should we ever be chosen to have a retail establishment, what that process would be. Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods, so I'm thinking that's a good sign. All those in favor? That's carried. Next item is D7. That was Councillor Van Berkel. D7, and you had a seconder for the Bel Air Creek diversion program.
Right. Thank you, Your Worship. And I brought this back to for the gentleman who did a little bit of a deputation here tonight.
I'll get it on the table. One second, just to get it on.
Wait a second. Okay. That we're finally going to do something down there, and I've lived in that area for 50-some years, and I know what you're going through. I just lived 3 houses north on Maple Road from the Bel Air restaurant. So, but Lake Simcoe Conservation and working with Greenland International are prepared to do an EA, and that is because through development, there was some cash in lieu given for, for the wetland that they've actually destroyed. So Sleeping Lion, which is Cortell, and the town has another they were assessed a total of about $3.5 million. So the town has another $2.5 million. So they now want to undertake a class environment in that area, which is a real good beginning. And hopefully, they will complete some public meetings and develop a digital flood forecast for Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority. They will also, in the scheme of the work, they will do a detailed engineering report of how they can alleviate a lot of that flooding, at least up to the 25-year storm. And hopefully when all this is done, and we get the reports and staff has a look at them, because it all has to come back here in our engineering department, and they're going to have a look at it, and maybe in a year or two or a year and a half or so, we're going to see some relief of flooding. But it's a long process, but it started. And that's the first thing, really, other than, cleaning ditches and fixing culverts here and there, that is major for this area to alleviate flooding. And I'm very excited about that, because every year I'm faced with the same thing. And all the years that I was on council before that, every spring I got the calls, and now I got them again. So hopefully while I'm on this council term, I'm going to see something done about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Waters.
I think it's a good project, and I'm glad to see it go through, just to relieve residents from that flooding fear that happens every single year. People are spending hours upon hours staying up, worrying about whether or not to be flooded out again. But just a word of note to council and to staff is that we often allow buildings to go into areas which might be just outside floodplains, or we allow people to illegally or legally fill in low areas where floodwaters would naturally go. It would be my hope that our staff and council take this seriously, and that future applications for building in areas which are close to floodplains or flooded areas be not allowed even though they may not be in the flood phase, or field projects, because this is what ends up happening. We end up, saying yes to one builder, and then 10 years down the road, we have a $3 million bill to pay, which to correct the problem. So I just hopefully that we get wiser over the years to prevent this from happening in the future.
Councillor Sadi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I just wanted to say I was happy to read this report too, because I think all on council were aware of the flooding issues and the water problems, and I think anything that can support the efforts to divert the flows that are causing the flooding and mitigate future floods is important. And also, especially when it stated that it will reduce annual flooding by 85% over the existing conditions. And, that's a percentage that we really need to look at. Also, the benefit is that there is no cost to the town or the taxpayer. So this money has come from the other source, and I'm happy to see it.
Councillor Ices, and then Mr. Rayner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I took a little closer look at this map because I followed the creek back and noticed that it runs through one of the farms that we farm. And when you think of an area flooding more often that we've heard of over the years, you think, well, that creek must just be pumping the water into the town. And to me, that's really not the case. So I think it goes back to what Councillor Waters said, where I think we haven't planned enough for the water that is in the area. And my concern over just having this proposal is that we haven't thought it through enough yet. Like, what if this diversion isn't enough? So I would hope that we're not jumping the gun and saying that this is the answer if we haven't explored the question enough, and that maybe there's another route we should take. So I'm cautious to say this is the answer that will fix it, so let's spend money and construct this, when from my point of view, from the farm field, it's not the water from the creek, it's the water that hadn't been looked after from the development.
Mr. Rayner, and then Councillor Van Berkel.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to clarify that mostly for the public, that this is the beginning of this process, that this is really design and EA type work. And as Councillor Van Berkel pointed out, it's the first step and a significant step in the right direction. But I don't want there to be any confusion that this approval tonight does not approve a construction plan. So we are still some ways from confirming funding sources for that and the construction plan. I also want to confirm that we don't have the exact amount that may be available from the developer in question. We may have overstated it slightly in the report. That's actually a negotiation that's underway, and I don't want to give the wrong impression that we've confirmed that amount. And so we're working with our LSRCA partners and the developer to come up with a solution that makes sense. And I agree with Councillor Van Berkel. This is a significant first step. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Mr. Rayner covered exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add to Jason's comment, too, that the LSRCA has phosphorus offsetting money available, too, which is a new source of funding. So we'll be working with the LSRCA to demonstrate that this has a positive impact on the phosphorus to the lake. So maybe on funding there too.
Thank you. It is a legacy issue. It's been an issue for many years, and as the gentleman said in open forum, it will only get worse. We are having more and more significant rain events and happening over shorter periods of time. And from all reports, that also is going to get worse over the years. It's not an easy fix. If it was an easy fix, we'd have done it 50 years ago. The issue around development in the area is an issue that we ended up with because of old cottages, how Innisfil developed, not unlike Keswick on the other side of the lake, is much of a cottage area that then turned into homes. If this was right now undeveloped, it wouldn't have been developed because it's a floodplain. But we have to deal with what's in front of us, and I think that Greenland has had a very good they've had a lot of good solutions for the lake in the past, and I think it's an interesting thing to look at. I worry a little bit about expectations that this is going to be fixed tomorrow. It is not. It's going to take time. And one of my questions then through to Mr. McKenzie is about timeline and about the application to the National Disaster Mitigation Program. When will we find out whether or not that's successful?
Thank you, Your Worship. Timelines for the application, I will look to some help in the audience here with Greenland, but I believe it's within the next month that we should be hearing about the application. Okay. And the project scope, an EA would typically take a year. Then the final design, where we really get into it, another year. So construction is 3 years out, a project this big, okay? Even in an emergency situation, if you were to go in and do it, it's still a year to two before you could actually do this work.
Thank you very much. But if we don't get started, then every journey starts with a single step. Let's get this journey on the road, because it is something we've got better at reacting to it. We've got more pumps now. We had people out there 24 hours. We knew it was coming. We did our best to alleviate some of the frozen culverts prior. We did some ditching. So we're getting better at reacting, but this is a proactive step, and I think it's an important one to take. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That's carried. Next is D8, and I think that was Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. Rosardo, I'm not opposed. Yes, Your Worship, I just didn't want us to pass by this item after having the tour that we had last week. And it is a very exciting project to be a part of. And the fact that we have to spend more on it is explained in the report. I just didn't want us to say we're spending another $1 million and not say, why. Bringing healthcare to Innisfil of this type, it's going to make us, I believe, the envy of the area. So that was the reason I wanted to bring it forward, and just to tell the public what a great facility it's going to be. So,
thank you, Councillor Ices. Well said. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Now, this moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Nicol. This is the tracking update that we received tonight that talks about different motions that we had in the books and where they are. Very helpful. It's oftentimes when you when you make a motion and you wonder, you haven't heard in a couple of months what's going on, it's a wonderful tool to have. So my question to you is, though, through you to the clerks, is how often do you want to see this? Is this once a quarter? Is this twice a year? What do you think? I think once a month would just take too much staff time. And I'm seeing a quarter. Is a quarter suitable for everybody? Okay, we'll try that, and if it gets to be too much, then maybe we can move it to twice a year, but thank you very much for this. This is a great tool. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Next is the item, the very lengthy report on the agenda from the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services. I need a seconder for this, Councillor Van Berkel. This is just to receive, but my reason for bringing this forward was, you know, the report talks a lot about collaboration and different stakeholders, but I just want to make sure there's one person who is leading this. I think it's Chief Fletcher, but I'll look to you, Mr. Rayner. Is that who's leading this process?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, we are happy to have Chief Fletcher be taking the lead on this. As you know, the police services was successful in obtaining a grant for a coordinator. I've forgotten her last name at the moment, but she's helping the chief quarterback this. We're working in collaboration with our colleagues in Bradford, West Gwillimbury, as well as the County of Simcoe. I'm very excited to bring this forward. We've been working very hard with our colleagues to ensure that, how do I put this correctly? We don't need another plan. We need coordination of services. And I mean that in the best way possible. They're working very hard to not duplicate things, but to make sure that we're connecting the dots on all the good work that's actually being done already on health and wellness and safety in our communities. And so we look forward to reporting out to you in the near future. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much. And maybe we could have that coordinator at some point come to the school zone. I can't get that acronym yet. School Zone Safety and Traffic Safety Committee. Thank you. All those in favor of receiving that for information? Thank you. And the final item that I had tonight was in regards to correspondence from Simcoe Shores Secondary School. I wanted to propose a motion that we provide a $200 bursary to be presented at their graduation on June the 27th. And it's seconded by Councillor Van Berkel, and if I could speak to it for a moment. So I got this correspondence, or got it on the agenda, and I looked up the Simcoe Shores Secondary School. I thought it was in Barrie because that's where the correspondence came from, but it actually is in Innisfil. It's a school that's designed, and I'm not going to get this right, but it's an alternate. It's for kids who've kind of dropped out of school and said school isn't for me, and it's an alternate approach to teaching that gets them to come back to school and graduate. There's approximately 35, I understand, students at that school now that are Innisfil residents. I'm not sure. The deputy clerk was going to check and see if there was any that were graduating this year, but we do provide a bursary or some kind of an award for the Nantyre Shores Secondary School graduation, I believe. And I thought it appropriate, if we're going to do it for that, we should also do it for these students who struggled and found their way back to graduate from high school. And I would ask Mr. Davis if there's money in our discretionary budget in order to cover a $200 bursary.
Your Worship, members of council, I think there's $200 to cover this, yes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? That's carried. A recommendation to rise from committee. Councillor Sadi, Councillor Ices, all those in favor? That's carried. And adoption of the Committee of the Whole recommendations. Councillor Payne, Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That's carried. There's no notice of motions this evening. Is there announcements this evening? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to announce, I was talking to former Councillor Simpson, who was elected on the referee committee for the drain, and they completed all their work, and he wanted me to, all in one day, a matter of fact, all 18, and he wanted me to let council know that he felt it was done very professionally and that every one of the members acted very professionally, and he wanted to thank council for all the work that they did into it, and it's done. Oh, one more. And I want to congratulate my neighbor, two streets down, who won $11 million Friday night in a lot of 649. Derek Francis.
Councillor, maybe you could talk him into donating to the Bel Air flooding issue.
Well, he needs to, because, you know, he lives in that area, and I can tell you, half a year he has lakefront property.
Other announcements? Councillor Ices.
Yeah, just on the comments made by Councillor Van Berkel, I was in the building and I saw the proceedings with the drainage meeting, and I would definitely concur it was done very professionally. I'm just wondering what we do for those people who volunteered to help us on that committee. I'm not sure if that was, if there's something that they get for that. I just had that question.
Mr. Rayner?
Your Worship, members of council, those members that volunteered their time are fully aware that legislatively the costs, any costs associated with this project are put back on the drain. So they were very clear with us that they did not expect or desire any remuneration. However, there is a volunteer barbecue coming up very soon, and we're happy to acknowledge them. And frankly, those members, as you all know, do so much for the community. We couldn't begin to thank them properly for everything that they do, but we'll certainly try.
Councillor Payne.
I just wanted to mention that I did sit on the council, the court proceedings, and I found them really interesting. I was really glad that I went. There was a lot of people that weren't happy, and there was a lot of people that were happy, but it was really, really interesting, so I was glad to see that, and it was nice to see Councillor Simpson sitting up here and being the judge. I think he enjoyed that. Also, well, I was going to say I attended a little, I'm not sure what we call it, a donation for the Risardo Health Center, but I'm going to leave that for the mayor to mention that. But it was a pleasant day out there as well. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Payne. Yeah, Councillor Payne and I attended Maple Heights Farm and Innisfil Creek Honey, and they had an event over the March break, and the proceeds went to the Risardo Health and Wellness Center. So we were very happy to go out there and receive a check for $1,200 from this community. It was wonderful. And the owner of Maple Heights Farm is also one of our full-time firefighters, so that was extra special. Just a couple of quick announcements. It's been a really exciting couple of weeks in the town of Innisfil. We were happy to have Minister Stephen Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, come and do a presentation here for all of Ontario. He chose Innisfil to make an announcement for the Modernization and Efficiency Fund, and that was pretty special. The very next day, the Minister of Finance, Minister Fideli, was over at Innisfil, or Georgian Downs, making an announcement about horse racing. So I don't think we've ever had two ministers in Innisfil 2 days in a row. So I think that's probably a record. And both of them bringing checks with them, which was even better. So that was a great experience. I also was really happy to attend a flag raising in Bradford, West Gwillimbury on Monday night. And it was a flag raising for the 50th anniversary of the Special Olympics. And our very own Christy Alford was there, fresh off a plane from Dubai with her medals. So I've invited her to come here and do a presentation to us about her experience. And she has graciously agreed to do that. And finally, I just want to mention that this Saturday is Seedy Saturday at the Innisfil Lakeshore Library. There's some vendors there, and you can exchange your seeds and also bring a donation to the food bank. And that evening, shut your lights off. All the town buildings that are allowed to do it will be turning their lights off from 8:30 to 9:30. And if you're looking at something to do during that hour, you can come for a free skate at the Innisfil Rec Center. And then on Tuesday, at Stroud at 7:30 in the morning is the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. And I'm not sure if there's any tickets left, but certainly if there is, we'd be happy to have you there. And as I mentioned earlier, a flag raising for autism on August the 2nd, or April the 2nd. So those are my announcements. Anyone else? Thank you. And finally, the confirming bylaw is moved by Councillor Ices and seconded by Councillor Payne. All those in favor? An adjournment moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? I don't know of anybody who's ever voted against an adjournment motion, but thank you everybody for your time and attention. For those of you online, I hope that the sound was better tonight, and thank you for watching.